an answer, but does she realise that Somaliland since 1991 has had 6 democratic elections, observes the rule of law, has religious tolerance and is a haven of peace in that awful area of the Horn of Africa? Why will His Majesty's Government not recognise that we must support and encourage democracy around the world, particularly in Africa, where we give money to some appalling regimes like Zimbabwe?
waa doodii ugu dambeysay oo daawadayaal shalay toolagelinkii dambe ka dhacday baarlamaanka dalka Ingiriiska taasi oo lagaga doodayay arrimo la xiriira geeska Afrika gaar ahaan Somaliland iyo sidoo kale Soomaaliya iyo heshiiskii Muuse Biixi uu la galay dalkaasi Ethiopia. kulankan ayaa daawadayaal xildhibaanadu waxa ay su'aalaad ku weydiiyeen mid ka mid ah hogaamiyaasha dhanka siyaasadda ee u qaabilsan mandiqada geeska Afrika taasi oo ka soo hormuuqatay baarlamaanka isla markaasina ka warbixisay xaaladda mandiqada geeska Afrika iyadoo dabcan ku dheeraatay haatan xaaladda geeska Afrika iyo sidoo kale galaangalada kala duwan ee beesha caalamku ay ku daneynayaan in saldhigyo kala duwan ka helaan mandiqada geeska Afrika. مسؤولكن أي سؤاله يجوب بدنا الويدية واحد لحج أنا قوسي الصومالي لأن يوري بس ده وكلا سيدا الدولة الإنجليزية وقت حاضر كان قدنا نيسو إن أي شوكتين تشينها منطقة الجيز كأفريقيا دب عن سامين تسهاتن كوسا بدنا الجيز كأفريقيا أي وحقوق قبل الله هيدي ده الويد الإنجليزية كأنه أنا مرة بتاجر الدولين قد يدقون جوسد كهساها تمسؤول كهالك كم وضع وطبعا سؤالها اللي ويدينه هي يدو شيكتي إن الإنجليز مرة بأقوانسانين سومالي لأن إسلام مركز نواركو قيب كم سوماليا وحي كده حي سومالي لأن يولي بسيدو كلا سوماليا أي مهم تهينا كوضا هاللان الله بدل إناع واسيدا أي شيكتي هذا بقى دودي يسيدو كلا سؤالي هقوات كاي اللي سويدية ينداو دي هالكن كوغوسو قدوين الناس المركز نوان فلنقين سودو مركله واتهاي سيدا جود هامبا طبعا أو صعوتان منطقة الجيزة أفريقيا وقت حاضر كان واحد مريسا ميل حساسي إسلام مركزنا واحد حالة مريسا ميل أذك تاسيو هاتن كيني كتا إن Somaliland أي نقطة ميل استراتيجية يولي بسيدو كلا بيسس كلا دوان أو أي عالم كدنينيا إني كهري كران لكن سؤالها وجود بدنا اللي ودي مسؤول كنا يا واحد شيكتي إن أنا مرة بالدولة أي كتر سنة هاي UK أقونسي بحرسين دولة Somaliland وحنا نحر كي سؤالها وجود بدنا اللي ودي ودعي سيدة داوشون أكسن.
In the international community does not recognise Somaliland's unilateral declaration of independence. The settlement of Somaliland's status is an issue for Somalia, including Somaliland, to decide through a consultative process and dialogue.
My Lords, I thank the Noble Lady for that answer, but does she realise that Somaliland since 1991 has had 6 democratic elections, observes the rule of law, has religious tolerance and is a haven of peace in that awful area of the Horn of Africa? Why will His Majesty's Government not recognise that we must support and encourage democracy around the world, particularly in Africa, where we give money to some appalling regimes like Zimbabwe? Surely this is a time for Her Majesty's Government to face up to the fact that other countries, like France has recognised it, we should be recognising Somaliland now.
Yeah. My Lords, the Noble Lady is right in her strong support for Somaliland, but that doesn't change our position on the question of recognition of Somaliland as an independent state. But she's right, and we do have a very long-standing and deep relationship with Somaliland, not least because of the large number of Somalis living here in the UK, but also our support for the port there, our support for health, for education, for security, and in many other ways, and we're very pleased to continue with that relationship.
My Lords, are we sure we've got this completely right? I do remember 10 years ago at the Foreign Office having to give exactly the same answers as the Minister has given now about it. But on reflection and in totally changed conditions, particularly in the area of the Middle East and East Africa, and West Africa, sorry, and particularly in those areas, surely there's new considerations come in. I mean, why do we have to wait for every other nation to recognise and help Somaliland? They are extremely feisty, if I may use that word, organised country, quite well run, passionately pro-British. It would do us enormous help to have a really good friend in that very sensitive area with the Chinese pouring in next door. It makes utter sense for our review, for our own foreign policy, to think about this positively. Would you take it back to the Foreign Office and ask them to think again?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very pleased to provide consistency in the government's approach. I think the UK needs to tread carefully in regards to this in the Horn of Africa, given the situation that the Noble Lord has just described. We do have strong links. We have a permanent diplomatic presence in Somaliland, but my sense is that this would not be the right thing to do for the stability in the wider region to wade in and to take such an act at this point in time.
Ethiopia has recognised Somaliland in return for Red Sea access, and Egypt has signed a military and security defence arrangement with Somalia, with Ethiopian troops currently in Somalia, then caution, I believe, is justified. The UK was the lead funder for the African Union peacekeeping mission in this area in Somalia with regards against al-Shabaab. Is it not in the UK's key strategic interests that we restore the funding for the new mission, which is mandate going to be renewed at the end of this year, to ensure that al-Shabaab does not benefit from the tension and the standoff between Somaliland, Somalia, Ethiopia and Egypt?
Well, I'm grateful to the Noble Lord for reminding us just how complex this situation is, and we have to keep in mind where Ethiopia is, where Egypt is, Somalia, Eritrea. It's somewhere that you don't take rash decisions. We are committed to making sure that the fight to combat al-Shabaab is taken forward, and we will play our role in that, as he would expect.
Lords, can I suggest what the Noble Lord Purvis has just said about the importance of keeping the battle against al-Shabaab at the top of our priorities and bearing in mind what has already happened in the Horn of Africa, not least in Tigray? Isn't the government right to proceed with caution? Can the Noble Baroness tell us whether she is in discussion with members of the African Union to discover what their views are about this? And also, will she bear in mind that independence in the case of South Sudan has hardly led to peace in that troubled part of the country?
Well, we're desperately worried about what is happening in South Sudan, and Minister Annalisa Dodds has visited there very recently. And yes, we will be keeping this at the front of our minds. I think, as I said earlier in the week when these matters were discussed, that my noble friend Lord Collins has been in Ethiopia in the last few days, and he's right to make sure and to urge caution and wisdom at all times in this.
Lords, can I also urge caution on this matter? It's got wider implications for places like Ukraine, and I think that any decision that was made here has to take into account the wider implications that will be made if a change was made.
I think the Noble Lord has summarised what I've been trying to say very well, and I thank him for that.
My Lords, I'd like to thank the Noble Baroness Lady Hoey for bringing this matter to the attention of the House. This is a very important issue, and as the Noble Baroness and Minister said, stability in the region is absolutely paramount. But, my Lords, the Noble Baroness has also mentioned the influence of the African Union. There's got to be, we have to take this matter further. We have to encourage dialogue between the parties themselves so that sovereignty can be recognised for Somaliland. And what other matters can the Noble Baroness comment on in the ways they're persuading the parties to this disagreement actually come to the table and come to agreement?
Well, I thank